to a 6 p.m. talk. Hi. Thanks for coming to a 6 p.m. talk on a Saturday. That's how crazy we are as security people. This is what we do with our time. So thanks for coming out. My talk is deploying deceptive systems. So I'll give you a little bit on who I am, the premise of the talk, deployment strategies, some demonstrations of some of the free stuff that's out there, and then we'll have some time for a Q&A. And I apologize for the little bit of blinking we have going on here. We tried many a dongle and had no success in resolving it, so please bear with us. So I'm an advanced persistent Pittsburgher, worked at a number of companies all around that city, PNC Financial Services, SAP Ariba. I'm currently with Dick's Sporting Goods. Really have done my whole InfoSec career there. I'm relocating to Columbus though, just recent development. So any Columbus people, if you're here, awesome, let's talk. Excellent, all right. I heart mangled packets, insecure direct object references, long walks on the beach. Been doing this for 20 years, and I've done some talking too. I love my B-Sides Pittsburgh, B-Sides Cleveland is another great one, and of course DerbyCon. And this is my first ever CircleCityCon, both attending and speaking, and it's been a great conference. So thanks to all those guys for setting this thing up. Really, really good stuff. Thank you. So the only purpose of this slide is to say that I've seen some things, not all of them entirely wonderful, so let's get to it. So the premise of deceptive systems, it's honeypots, okay? Nothing new here. Honeypot concept has been around forever, but there's kind of been a renewed, I guess maybe rebranded. It's not honeypots anymore, it's deception. And so the vendors out there are going to sell you deception technology, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and they're going to tell you, that maybe you can't do it any other way. You can, but it's certainly not a new concept. So if we consider that we are operating, you hear this mantra, we'll just assume that the network is compromised, assume that the bad guys are running around on your network, moving laterally, and this and that. So if you think about that, okay, so they've already bypassed our next-gen firewall. They've already bypassed our super-duper endpoint detection, any IDS, IPS stuff that might be there. So how are you really going to catch a bad guy in that sort of situation? And one way to do that is with honeypots. So create some systems on the network that will entice the bad guys to come to your system, touch it, which would be really weird because nobody should ever touch that system. So that's really the idea. And then maybe get a little attribution as a part of that, and maybe be able to respond, kick the system off, maybe do additional monitoring on the account that was used to touch the honeypot, that sort of thing. The whole thing is, these are potentially valuable systems. You want them to look very valuable. You don't want them to look like, just completely vulnerable systems. You want them to look like there's really good stuff here, so much so that the bad guys are going to come and touch them. So you want these things to get noticed, but you don't want them to be too noticed. This is an example of a good deployment, right? It's a choir, everybody's singing the same song, they all kind of look the same, But what you don't know is that one person in that crowd is a spy, and she knows the whole story about the pastor and the secretary, okay? It's a bad deployment, right? Sticking out like a sore thumb, not really fitting in, saying maybe the wrong things. That's not what you want your honeypots to look like. So some deployment do's. Do set your traps on sensible subnets. So you might want to have a honeypot in the DMZ, for example. Or if you have one set up to look like a file server, put it where all the other file servers are. Same subnets, same naming conventions, that sort of stuff. So put them in the places that are appropriate. Give them convincing names and attributes. So don't just create a naming convention that makes no sense for what every other computer in your organization is named. And if you tend to set attributes on certain servers in Active Directory, Things like if you create a new workstation and you put the user's name in there, we'll do it for this too. You don't want to give any indication that there's anything different about this domain joined system than other domain joined systems. Sprinkle enticing honey ducks and honey credentials all over the network. You don't just have to put them on your honeypot, you can put them all over the place and have them report back and tell you when they're being touched. Places like the intranet, it might be a good place to put a passwords.docx file. Continuously improve, be creative, think about how best to make these devices look like they're actually real, and make it realistic. So some placement don'ts. Don't make a subnet just for honeypots, because it will probably never ever get touched. There is one exception maybe to that, and that's if you're creating a honeypot that looks like a router or a network device. A lot of organizations, your network starts with .1 and .1's the router. But you can never create a honeypot that is .1 on the network because, well, it's always occupied by a router. So maybe get creative with your network team and create a subnet that's just for your honeypot router so that it can be .1. Don't name them things like CEO never patches or XP legacy pwn me. That is going to be a sure sign that that is not a legitimate system and it will never ever get touched by anyone. Don't forget to make a whitelist. So you probably have a number of systems in your environment already that are scanning, doing some automated scanning, maybe vulnerability scanners that might light these things up if they come across them. So make sure you understand, there is some tuning to be done here. And if you don't know by default all the different things that are out there scanning, learn, create your whitelist, and then deploy so you're not getting a bunch of false positive errors. Don't set it and forget it, because that's not going to help anyone in any tool deployment ever. Okay, so now it's demo time, and let's hope everything works. I'll just let you preface this and tell you that none of this is mine. I did not write any of the honeypot technology I'm about to show you here. I'm just really showing you how to use it. Thank you to John Strand and Black Hills InfoSec for the work that they did with ADHD, which is a really great honeypot distribution that I'll be demoing. And thanks to all the open source honeypot devs out there that are really making this possible. So the first one I'll demo is Canary Tokens. This is a free service that you can go to at canarytokens.org. They give you 15 different types of honey tokens for free, where they can make a callback, or they can alert if they're touched either via email, or they can call back on a webhook, and then you can pick up the alert from there. So to help the demo, scan this. It's totally safe. I mean it. I'll scan it myself. So this is an actual honey token, and you can, imagine, you slap this on the bottom of a corporate asset or something like that, and say password reset instructions, and then somebody comes along and scans it, and so now they've just triggered your honey token, and let's see what that looks like. Okay, that worked. So let's see. Oh man, I was the only one that scanned it. But that's what the alert kind of looks like. You get back to the source IP, which honey token you actually triggered, the user agent and all this stuff. And then you can go in and actually manage the honey token or get more information about it here. And it's taken a guess that, this last time that I've touched it, it was from the 40.140 IP address, which is the hotel's Windstream IP that geolocates to here. So pretty cool for just scanning a QR code. This is what the actual generation page looks like. And if you do a drop down here, you'll see all sorts of different honey tokens that you can create. Anything from cloning the website to creating a Word or a PDF document, which I'll demonstrate a little later. AWS keys that if somebody picks up and tries to use, I mean, that's awesome. So all sorts of stuff. I believe I had there we go. So this is just a DNS query. And I get back a Amazon IP. But if I refresh here, you'll see that I got a new honey token. It's type DNS. So kind of cool. It gives you all sorts of options. And I'm guessing that this source IP is the resolver. It's not going to give actual source because my IP didn't necessarily look that up. Okay, that's honey tokens. So next up is ADHD. It stands for Active Defense Harbinger Distribution. It is a Linux distro that is just filled up with all kinds of honeypots and tools around that. Don't try to get fancy. If you stand the thing up, read the manual. I tried to do this first with a 64-bit image because I knew better, and then I fought with it for 4 hours and said, really? Is it? And then I got the 32-bit and worked like a champ. So don't do what I did. And we'll cover 2 tools that are inside of ADHD, but we'll take a look at all the stuff that's in there as well. So the first thing we'll look at is Open Canary. Open Canary is a really slick little set of listeners, I guess, that will sit there and listen and pretend to be a Cisco router or a Windows file share or a system that's listening on VNC or a system that's an open proxy. FTP server, all kinds of stuff. SQL Server gives you all these options that you can configure and say, okay, I want this particular system to look this way. There are just a couple of notes that I wanted to put there that aren't really in the documentation that I fought with a little bit. Just edit that one file and then edit the opencanary.conf to actually configure what services you want to turn on. And then if you want to use the file share, the Samba capabilities, you do have to do a little bit of editing to the smb.conf on your Linux distribution to get that to work, for all the alerting and all that stuff to work properly. So let's see if we can get lucky with a second demo. Ooh. Yes. Okay, doke. So let me just come back here real quick. And we'll just do a quick nmap of my Ubuntu VM here to show you what it looks like right now. So right now, only port 80, 139, and 445 is open. So if we come over here, actually, I'll show you the config file first. So this is what would be one of those Steve Buscemi honeypots. This one I intentionally did turn everything on just to show you the capabilities in the demo. I would not recommend doing it this way, but I just wanted to show you what's out there. So there's essentially lines per service that you're interested in turning on. This one here is a Synology NAS login, so it looks just like a Synology NAS, complete with username and password box, and it will actually collect the credentials that the attacker's attempting to use. Same goes for the FTP server. Same goes for the Cisco router. And then this section is really about logging. So you can log off to a local file. You can log off to syslog. The logs are in JSON format, so pretty easy to consume in any SIM, hopefully. This section sets up the Samba stuff, you know, try to make us have a really secure SMB share sitting out there that's hosting like some really awesome documents. This is the Cisco router section, where you can actually configure some honey creds as well to generate an extra alarm if somebody tries to log in with one of those defined honey creds. Okay, so let's launch OpenCanary. Okay, a bunch of noise, and then let's see if we're good. And there we go. We got a lot more ports listening, and I guarantee they're all a bunch of nonsense. So if we just telnet to ourselves, oh, cool, like there's a router. Suddenly we're a router, and it's just going to do that all day. But if you, forget the location of those logs. Make sure I got this right. RTMP. There we go. You can see that this guy is complaining about the fact that someone at localhost just tried to log in with this username and password, and by the way, that was also a honey cred, so maybe you could generate some additional alerts, something like that, when you saw something along those lines. I'll come over here and, oh, there's our Synology NAS. Very, very convincing. But you can essentially clone any website you would want here. They call it a skin in OpenCanary. So it's just a set of HTML, CSS, just stuck in a directory, and you can skin this however you want. So if you have the company intranet or anything that you might want to present to an attacker as something that would be very valuable for them to gain access to, you can do it using this method. Let's see, what else? Oh, must have a file share. Yes. So we're going to mount the SMB file share that is available on Honeypot now. Oh, it's called secure, so that must be good. And then we have our passwords.docs. Can't resist it. It just looks so yummy. And oh, there's nothing in there. That's disappointing. It's a bad guy. But if we come back, take a look, we have a new alert. And there it is. Source IP, I opened the Word document. And now you know somebody touched something that you left out there intentionally. So OpenCanary is pretty cool. Free. And there's some other services here. It's not that it can be completely defeated, and I should show you that. Oh, I need to sudo that. So if you do the aggressive scan, which is going to test for banner versions and all that sort of thing, it's going to light up OpenCanary for sure. So if you're interested in getting that kind of information, you're going to get all sorts of stuff in the logs about the fact that this IP is now enumerating all sorts of things on the back end. See, you can even see Nmap scripting engine showing up in the logs. Okay, and now if you take a look here, this does not look like a legit server, really. I mean, here's Cisco Telnet D, but then I'm running Apache, and I got the SSH doesn't make sense, and Ubuntu, and it's everything about it is a little bit weird. So certainly not perfect, but an attacker might roll along and not do an nmap-a because they don't want to make a bunch of noise because they're smart. If they're not smart and they are making a bunch of noise, you know, then maybe you're going to pick this up too because you just got all those log files. So that's pretty much it. That's what Open Canary looks like. I'm blowing through stuff really fast. I'm sorry. Anybody have any questions about either Canary tokens or Open Canary? Sir. Yeah, I'm not aware of any vulnerabilities with regards to Open Canary. Now, you're right, sometimes it is using back-end instances, Samba, for example. It's using whatever Samba is installed on the box, and if you have some insecure version of Samba, and the bad guy figures that out and pops it, now your honeypot just became a attack platform, and that's probably not ideal. But as far as the other things that it spins up, I haven't seen anything on vulnerabilities there. Whether the bad guy could potentially insert something malicious in a log, and now if your log parser isn't parsing properly and it executes that command, that could be bad. I could definitely see some ways you could get into trouble there. Sure. Yeah. I will say that and this is not a plug. I didn't come here to plug commercial solutions, but this company who makes Open Canary, they also have a commercial solution, and that solution has been thoroughly tested and certified against vulnerabilities within the hardware platform and the software as well. But that's not to say that they've retrofitted all that stuff into the open source solution. Any other questions? Yeah. So what happens is whenever you, so when you hit the QR code with your QR code scanner, the default for most of those is just go to the website that's in the QR code. When it comes to the Word doc, same thing. You open the Word doc, it goes to a website. So all of those triggers are happening with an HTTP call up to the cloud where Canary stuff's hosted, and then it's their service that sends the email that's defined or goes to the webhook it's defined for that particular token. Okay, well, we'll go on to our last one, which is Honey Badger, red. You know, Honey Badger doesn't give a... So there's not much additional config required for this guy. The attribution on it is really accurate, and I'll show you that here in a second. It's really the only, I guess, way of legally hacking back, and it's not really even hacking back, and I'll explain when I do the demo. But there are some limitations too, and we'll take a look at all that stuff. So, Hookle-dookle. Back here at Firefox. And so, imagine this is the best VPN portal, best clone of a VPN portal you've ever seen. I'm not a web developer, so I'm not even going to attempt to insult you with that. But just for a second, humor me and use your imagination. This is a VMware Horizon login portal or a Cisco ASA login portal for VPN, something that looks, relatively convincing. So the first thing you can ask it to do is to say to the person touching it, hey, give me your location. Which a bad guy probably isn't going to do. But hey, maybe they're just lazy and they just give you their location. Okay. Well, then you'll see that up here we have this Java plugin that wants to run. If this is convincing enough, and if the way to get on the network is to install this Java plugin, maybe a bad guy would go for it, you know. So let's say, okay, I'm down. Let's allow it for now. Oh, my version of Java's out of date. Shame. Then again, when isn't it out of date? Okay, so hey man, the publisher is a verified code certificate. Seems legit. So, I mean, if it's verified, I'm going to run that bad boy. And nothing happens. Oh, well, I guess some other day, maybe some other day, I'll be able to hack into this system. So for us, we'll just come over to this neato administrator page. And let's see. Oh, well, we got some little pins on the map there. So I'm a Pittsburgh guy. I may have tested this somewhere in Pittsburgh. But let's look at Indianapolis first. Getting pretty close. Getting pretty close. Yeah, like, that's my hotel room. Yeah, and this is also where I tested it here. Let's go. Now, it's pretty good for location-based, and you might be wondering how is GPS? You don't have GPS on your computer, so how? And so what happens with that magical Java applet is when you run it, it sees if you have any Wi-Fi interfaces available, and if you do, it does a Wi-Fi site survey. And it looks all around at the Wi-Fi networks near you and then sends that up to Google, who has an excellent database of everybody's Wi-Fi networks. And it can come within feet, as accurate as 3 feet where you are. So it does not matter if the attacker is behind 7 proxies. It doesn't matter if they're behind 20. If they've been dumb enough to do this not in a VM, limitation number 1, if the attacker's in a VM, they might not have an apparent Wi-Fi interface. Assuming they've left their Wi-Fi radio on, it's going to just run that Wi-Fi site survey, and you're going to get back to location. You can see that at our corporate offices in Pittsburgh, I was demoing this for about 5,000 people all over the building. But each of these locations were literally someone's office, or someone's cubicle or something like that. It's that accurate to be able to put pins that close together. So the idea is that you stand this up on the outside of your network, sensible placement. You stand this up on the outside, make it look very convincing, give it a good DNS name, and hope that somebody that's after you is now going to trip over it and reveal themselves. And so some of the information you'll get back is, obviously this is all internal stuff, so I'm getting my internal IP address here, but if this was sitting on the outside in a real world type deployment, that's going to be external IP, latitude and longitude, and an accuracy score out of 100. User agent as well. So pretty good stuff. And if this isn't your best threat intel right here, I don't know what is, because now you know that somebody is after you, and so maybe you take those source IPs and just block them, because obviously or at the very least do a lot more monitoring on them, because they're obviously very interested in you. Make sense? Any questions? All right. There are a couple other, just because I have a little extra time. So there's a couple other options that you get here too. There's a dot. Oh, yes, sir. Yes. Freezing beer. Yeah. All good. All good. So they also supply a .docx that does the same thing, a PowerShell script that does the same thing, a Bash script that does the same thing. Again, this is all open, so if you're familiar in any of these areas and want to try it out or try to improve, I think the folks working on this stuff would appreciate it. Not medical devices. I have seen some that will imitate ICS devices, like PLCs, Siemens PLCs, that kind of stuff. But medical devices I haven't seen. I'm sure anybody making the commercial solutions for this would be interested in hearing about that, because they're really pushing this stuff hard. I will just. Oh, thank you very much.
But I do have some various medical type devices.
So I mentioned that there's more than a couple honeypots that are provided with ADHD. Binary Defenses Artillery is here. The browser exploitation framework is here. Couple versions of Honey Badger, Honey Ports. This jar combiner is really helpful if you want to take that jar file that I showed you, the demo one, and smash it together with another jar that's maybe a little more legit looking. That'll do it for you. All sorts of different stuff. HTTP tar pit, which is really fun. So, again, I would just recommend going out and checking out ADHD. It's free download. Right, yeah, like this is your fingerprint for a honeypot, and yeah. I think you could, with this particular solution and Open Canary, I think you could get around some of that, because it's so configurable that you can say, I only want this guy to look like this particular type of system, rather than what I did here, which was like light it up like a Christmas tree and it looks crazy. And because it's installed on a per VM basis, then you wouldn't have the MAC address issue unless you deployed them all as like VMware instances or something like that. But even still, it's just going to say it's VMware. It's not going to say it's a honeypot necessarily. Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, that's pretty much the extent of it. Questions? Yes, sir. maybe some of the older ones. There was one that we used to use years ago called the La Brea Tar Pit, which was just really a way to slow down people who were doing recon on your network. So it would just listen on every possible port on an unused external IP address, and it would accept your inbound SYN packet and respond with a SYN ACK, and then just be like, and just sit there and wait. And then when the system on the other end would send another SYN, like, hey, I'm trying to establish, just wait. So that one is so obvious just because a port scan never gets through, and that's not a typical situation. But as far as other well-known ones, I can't really comment on that too much. Sir.
I'm assuming this is uses lots of file scripts for configuration stuff. It's not doing this. I'm thinking automating stuff. So some does go back. You could go away and recreate it so you're not manually rebuilding each one.
Yeah, those config files, once it's set, and you can put it down. If you want 10 new file servers, it would be pretty easy to just stamp them out with the right set of config files. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much. There's my information if you're interested in getting connected, and enjoy the rest of your con.